Commander Jake Morrison stared at the screen in front of him. The numbers didn't make sense. He rubbed his eyes and looked again. The same impossible readings stared back at him. "Amy, come look at this." He called to Lieutenant Amy Carter, who was checking the coffee machine across the room. Amy walked over, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor of the orbital defense station. The station was called New Horizon, and it floated in space between Earth and the Moon. It was Jake's job to watch for anything strange coming from deep space. "What's wrong with the sensors now?" Amy asked. "The sensors broke down a lot. Most of the time it was just space junk or old satellites." Jake pointed at the screen. "Look at these energy readings. 12 massive objects just appeared at the edge of our solar system. They're slowing down from nearly light speed." Amy's face went pale. Nothing natural could do that. "Are you sure the sensors aren't broken? I've run 3 different checks. The readings are real." Jake's hands were shaking as he typed commands into his computer. "Amy, these things are huge. Each one is the size of a small moon." Amy grabbed the emergency phone. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the fear underneath. "Command, this is New Horizon Station. We have a code black situation. 12 unknown objects approaching the solar system." While Amy talked to command, Jake kept watching the screen. The objects were definitely slowing down. They were also moving in perfect formation. This wasn't an accident or natural event. Someone was driving these things. Down on Earth, Dr. Lisa Webb was eating lunch when her emergency phone rang. She was the world's top expert on alien life, though until today she had never seen any proof that aliens existed. "Dr. Webb, please. Report to International Space Command immediately." "This is not a drill," the voice on the phone said. Lisa dropped her sandwich and ran to her car. The drive to the Space Command building took 20 minutes. When she arrived, she saw military vehicles everywhere. Soldiers were running around with serious looks on their faces. General Pete Collins met her at the door. He was a big man with gray hair and worried eyes. "Lisa, we need you to look at something. We're getting signals from space." They rushed to the communications room. The room was full of computers and screens. People in military uniforms sat at desks, wearing headphones and typing frantically. "What kind of signals?" Lisa asked. "Listen to this," Pete said. He pressed a button, and strange sounds filled the room. The sounds were like nothing Lisa had ever heard. They were musical but also mechanical, like singing robots. "We think it's some kind of language," Pete said. "Our computers are trying to translate it, but we need your help." Lisa put on headphones and listened carefully. The sounds repeated in patterns. There were definitely rules to the language, like grammar. After an hour of listening, she started to understand some simple words. "General," she said, taking off the headphones. "I think I know what they're saying." Pete looked hopeful. "What is it?" Lisa's face was grim. "They're asking us to surrender. They say we should give up now or they will destroy everything." Meanwhile, in space near Jupiter, Captain Ben Taylor was having the worst day of his career. His ship, the Freedom's Edge, was the most advanced warship humans had ever built. It was fast, heavily armed, and had the best technology Earth could make. But Ben knew it wasn't enough. "Captain, incoming message from Earth Command," said Lieutenant Kate Phillips. She was his tactical officer, responsible for weapons and defense systems. "Put it through," Ben said. General Collins' voice came through the speakers. "Captain Taylor, you are to establish a defensive line between Jupiter and Mars. Buy us as much time as possible." Ben looked at his crew. There were 37 people on his ship. They were all good soldiers, but they were facing something impossible. "Understood, Command. We'll do our best." In the engine room, Tony Rodriguez was checking the ship's power systems. Tony was the best engineer in the fleet, but even he was worried. The ship's weapons were powerful, but they were designed to fight other human ships, not alien vessels the size of moons. "Kate, what do our sensors tell us about those alien ships?" Ben asked. Kate looked at her screens. "Captain, I'm reading energy shields around each vessel. The shields are incredibly strong. Our weapons might not even scratch them." Ben nodded grimly. What about their weapons? Unknown, sir. But if they can build shields that strong, their weapons are probably just as powerful. Back on the alien ships, War Marshal Thekvar was reviewing reports about the human species. The reports were not impressive. Humans had barely left their home planet. Their fastest ships were slow and crude. Their weapons were primitive chemical explosives and simple nuclear devices. How long until we reach their home world? Thekvar asked his second-in-command. 14 of their solar rotations, War Marshal. Should we prepare for a long siege? Thekvar made a sound that might have been laughter. A siege? Against these primitives? We will crush them in less than one rotation. They are insects compared to us. The alien had fought 17 different species across the galaxy. Some had been more advanced than others, but all had fallen to the Zephyrian Empire. These humans would be no different. But Thekvar was making a mistake. He was judging humans by their technology, not by their nature. Humans were different from the other species he had conquered. They were unpredictable, creative, and desperate. Most importantly, they were willing to do anything to survive. As the alien fleet moved deeper into the solar system, emergency meetings were happening on Earth. World leaders were gathering to decide humanity's response. Some wanted to try talking to the aliens. Others wanted to fight. Dr. Lisa Webb stood in front of the United Nations Security Council. Based on the messages we've received, these aliens have no interest in negotiation. They see us as inferior and want us to surrender without a fight. What happens if we surrender? Asked the President of the United States. Lisa looked at her notes. Based on what we've learned about their language, they plan to use Earth as a resource extraction site. They would keep some humans as workers, but most of the population would be eliminated. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. There would be no surrender. Humanity would fight, even if the odds were impossible. How long do we have? Asked the Prime Minister of Britain. Our ships will try to slow them down, but probably not more than 2 weeks, Lisa answered. 2 weeks to prepare for the end of the world. It didn't seem like enough time. But humans had survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. They would find a way to survive this too. The alien fleet continued its approach, confident in their superior technology and experience. They had no idea that they were about to face the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Sub-Marshal Creedon stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the asteroid belt grow larger on the main screen. The rocks floating in space between Mars and Jupiter looked harmless enough. His sensors showed nothing but dead stone and ice. War Marshal Thekvar wants a status report, his communications officer said. Creedon barely looked up from his tactical display. Tell him we will reach the 4th planet in 6 rotations. The humans have placed some ships near the asteroids, but nothing worth our concern. The alien commander had fought in 12 conquest campaigns. He had seen desperate species try everything to stop the Zephyrian Empire. Some used massive fleets. Others tried to hide their planets. A few even tried biological weapons. None of it had worked. These humans were no different. Their ships were small and slow. Their weapons were crude chemical rockets and primitive energy beams. Creedon's own ship could destroy 100 human vessels without taking damage. On the moon, Admiral Helen Brooks was not sleeping well. She had been awake for 36 hours straight, coordinating Earth's defense plans. The Lunar Command Center was hidden inside an old mining facility, protected by tons of rock and metal. Admiral, Dr. Clark is here to see you, her aide announced. Doctor, Ryan Clark walked into the command room carrying a thick folder of papers. Ryan was Earth's leading expert on alien technology, even though he had never seen any alien technology before last week. Helen, we've finished analyzing the energy signatures from their ships, Ryan said. The good news is that their shields operate on predictable patterns. The bad news is that they're incredibly strong. Helen rubbed her tired eyes. How strong? Strong, enough to stop anything we've ever built. Our biggest nuclear weapons would barely scratch them. Helen nodded. She had expected this. What about Operation Trojan Horse? Ryan smiled for the first time in days. That might actually work. The aliens are scanning us, but they're only looking for advanced technology. They're ignoring anything that looks primitive. Operation Trojan Horse was Helen's idea. Instead of showing the aliens humanity's best weapons, they would hide them and pretend to be even weaker than they really were. The aliens would get overconfident, and then humanity would strike. In the asteroid belt, Sergeant Mike Davis was checking his equipment one more time. His Special Forces unit was aboard a ship called the Shadow Runner. The ship looked like an old cargo vessel, but it was actually packed with experimental weapons. "Mike, we're approaching the target asteroid," Commander Laura Stone said over the radio. Laura was piloting the ship through the maze of floating rocks. Mike and his team were planting quantum mines throughout the asteroid belt. The mines were a new invention, designed to explode in ways that normal physics said were impossible. The aliens' shields were built to stop normal explosions. They had never encountered quantum explosions before. "Remember, these mines have to look like natural rock formations," Mike told his team. "If the aliens get suspicious, the whole plan fails." The work was dangerous. One mistake with a quantum mine could destroy their ship and everything within 1,000 kilometers. But Mike's team was the best humanity had. They had trained for missions like this their whole careers. On the alien flagship, the sensors officer was reporting to Creedon. "Submarshal, we detect 17 human ships in the asteroid region. They appear to be mining vessels and cargo haulers." Creedon looked at the display. The human ships were old and slow. They were probably trying to mine precious metals from the asteroids to fund their hopeless war effort. "Are they armed?" Creedon asked. "Minimal weapons, sir. Chemical rockets and basic energy projectors. Nothing that could threaten our shields." Creedon dismissed the human ships from his mind. Let them mine their rocks. Soon they would all be dead anyway. What Creedon didn't know was that every one of those mining ships was actually a military vessel in disguise. The cargo haulers were carrying enough explosives to crack planets in half. The humans weren't mining asteroids. They were turning the entire asteroid belt into a weapon. On Earth, young communications officer Emma Green was listening to alien radio chatter. Emma had a gift for languages, and she was learning to understand the Zephyrian language faster than anyone else. "Dr. Webb, you need to hear this," Emma called across the communication center. Dr. Lisa Webb put on headphones and listened to the recording Emma had captured. The alien voices sounded casual, almost bored. "What are they saying?" Lisa asked. Emma looked at her translation notes. "They're talking about their previous conquests. They mentioned something called the Kalari Defense Networks and the Vorthan Battle Spheres. I think these are other species they've defeated." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "What happened to those species?" According to this conversation, the Kalari tried to stop them with massive shield generators. The Vorthans used some kind of energy weapons that could destroy stars. None of it worked. Lisa realized the terrible truth. The aliens weren't just overconfident about fighting humans. They had good reason to be confident. They had defeated species with technology far more advanced than anything Earth possessed. But Emma had discovered something else in the alien conversations. "Dr. Webb, there's something strange. The aliens keep talking about honorable combat and traditional warfare. It sounds like all the species they fought before followed some kind of rules." Lisa thought about this. Humans didn't follow rules in war. They used every advantage they could find. They lied, cheated, and did whatever it took to win. Maybe that was what made them different. In his laboratory on the research ship Discovery, Dr. Susan Hayes was studying the energy patterns from alien weapon tests. The aliens had been firing at asteroids, probably to calibrate their weapons for the coming battle. "Computer, analyze the frequency variations in the alien energy discharges," Susan said. The computer worked for several minutes, then displayed the results. Susan stared at the screen in amazement. The alien weapons were incredibly sophisticated, but they followed perfectly predictable patterns. "They're too advanced for their own good," Susan muttered. "Their technology is so perfect that it never changes. It never adapts." This was humanity's first real advantage. Human technology was crude and unreliable compared to alien systems, but it was also flexible. Humans were always improving their weapons, always finding new ways to use old tools. Colonel. Steve Parker was commanding a small fleet of human ships near Jupiter. His orders were to make token attacks on the alien advance force, pretending to be desperate while actually gathering intelligence. All ships, prepare for attack run, Steve announced over the radio. Remember, we're supposed to look like we're trying our hardest. Make it convincing. The human ships charged toward the alien formation, firing missiles and energy beams. The weapons splashed harmlessly against the alien shields, just as expected. Several human ships were destroyed by casual, alien return fire. But every attack was being recorded by hidden sensors. Every alien response was being analyzed by computers back on Earth. The humans were learning exactly how alien technology worked. Lieutenant Nina Foster was aboard the intelligence ship Phantom, which was disguised to look like space debris. Her job was to get as close to the alien ships as possible and scan their internal systems. "Nina, are you getting anything useful?" her captain asked quietly. Nina studied her instruments. "Yes, sir. Their computer systems are incredibly advanced, but they all use the same basic programming. It's like they haven't updated their software in centuries." This was another human advantage. Human computers were constantly being upgraded and improved. Human programmers were always finding new ways to do things. The aliens had reached technological perfection, but perfection meant they had stopped growing. As the alien fleet moved deeper into the solar system, they remained completely confident in their superiority. They had no idea that every human defeat was actually an intelligence-gathering operation. They didn't know that human engineers were already designing weapons specifically to counter alien technology. War Marshal Thekvar received regular reports from his advance fleet. Every report confirmed what he expected. The humans were weak, their technology was primitive, and their resistance would collapse within days of the main assault. But Thekvar was about to learn that humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because of their technology but because of their nature. They were survivors who would do anything to protect their home. And they were about to show the aliens what that really meant. Captain Dan Miller knew he was about to die. His destroyer, the Relentless, was charging straight at 3 alien warships near Jupiter. Each alien ship was 10 times bigger than his vessel and armed with weapons that could vaporize planets. "Sir, are you sure about this?" his weapons officer asked nervously. Dan gripped his command chair tighter. "Just follow the plan, Lieutenant. Fire everything we have at their lead ship." The Relentless opened fire with all its missiles and energy cannons. The weapons streaked through space toward the massive alien vessel. Dan watched on his screen as every single shot bounced harmlessly off the alien shields. The enemy didn't even slow down. "Incoming energy discharge," his tactical officer announced. A beam of pure destruction lanced out from the alien ship. The Relentless exploded in a ball of fire and twisted metal. Dan Miller and his crew of 43 people died, instantly. On the alien bridge, Sub-Marshal Creedon barely noticed the destruction of the human ship. "How many vessels was that today?" he asked his aide. 17 human ships destroyed, sir. They keep making these pointless attacks." Creedon shook his head. These humans were either very brave or very stupid, probably both. Their ships were so weak that destroying them felt like swatting insects. What Creedon didn't know was that Captain Miller's suicide attack had been perfectly planned. Hidden sensors throughout the Relentless had recorded every detail of how the alien shields worked. The data was automatically transmitted to Earth before the ship was destroyed. Dr. Susan Hayes received the data transmission in her laboratory aboard the research vessel Discovery. She had been awake for 40 hours straight, analyzing the information from 17 different failed human attacks. "Computer, overlay the new shield frequency data with the previous recordings," Susan said. The computer worked for several minutes, then displayed a complex graph on the main screen. Susan stared at the pattern, hardly believing what she was seeing. "I've got it," she whispered. "I've actually got it." Susan grabbed her emergency communicator. "Admiral Brooks, this is Dr. Hayes. The alien shields rotate through 47 different frequency patterns in a precise sequence. It takes exactly 4.7 minutes to complete one full cycle." Admiral Helen Brooks was in the Lunar Command Center when she received Susan's call. Around her, dozens of technicians were coordinating the defense of Earth. The room was filled with the sound of typing keyboards and urgent conversations. "Susan, are you certain about this?" Helen asked. "Absolutely. Certain, Admiral. Every destroyed ship gave us more data. The pattern is always the same. If we can time our attacks to hit during the frequency transitions, we can punch through their shields." Helen felt hope for the first time in days. "How long do we have to prepare?" "The main alien fleet will reach Mars in 36 hours. That should be enough time to reprogram our weapons." Helen immediately contacted Colonel Steve Parker, who was commanding the human fleet near Mars. "Steve, we've found a weakness in their shields. Dr. Hayes is transmitting the data to you now." Colonel Parker was aboard his command ship, the Thunderbolt, when he received the shield frequency information. His chief engineer, a brilliant woman named Carlos Mendez, studied the data carefully. "This is incredible," Carlos said. "But we'll need to completely redesign our weapon targeting systems, and we'll need perfect timing." "How perfect?" Steve asked. "We'll have a window of 0.3 seconds every 4.7 minutes. If we miss the timing, our weapons will be useless." Steve nodded grimly. "Then we better not miss." On Earth, physicist Dr. Robin Banks was working with Carlos Mendez's team to develop something completely new. They called it chaos protocols, weapons that operated on random patterns instead of logical ones. "The aliens' computers are incredibly advanced," Robin explained to her team. "They can predict and counter any logical attack pattern, but they can't predict true randomness." Robin's chaos weapons would fire at seemingly random intervals, change direction without warning, and explode in unpredictable ways. The alien computers would go crazy trying to calculate defense patterns that didn't exist. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Nina Foster was still hidden aboard the intelligence ship Phantom, disguised as space debris near the alien fleet. She had been listening to alien communications for 3 days, learning more about their technology and tactics. "Captain, I'm picking up something interesting," Nina reported quietly. "The aliens are discussing their battle formations. It sounds like they always attack in the same patterns." Nina's captain looked at the translation. "What do you mean?" "They have 17 standard attack formations that they've used for centuries. Every battle follows the same basic plan. They've never had to improvise because their standard tactics always work." This was another critical piece of information. The aliens were not just technologically inflexible, they were tactically inflexible too. They had become so successful that they had stopped learning new ways to fight. On the alien flagship, War Marshal Thekvar was reviewing battle plans with his commanders. The plans were elegant and efficient, refined through hundreds of successful conquests. "We will use Formation 7 for the initial assault," Thekvar announced. "The humans have no aerial defense networks, so we can approach directly from above their planet." Formation 7 was a classic Zephyrian attack pattern. It had been used to conquer the Kalari homeworld and crush the Vorthon defense fleets. It would work perfectly against these primitive humans. Sub-Marshal Creedon raised a question. "War Marshal, our advanced scouts report unusual activity near the 4th planet. The humans seem to be concentrating their remaining ships there." Thekvar looked at the tactical display. Mars showed dozens of human vessel signatures clustered around the planet. "They're making their final stand. It's exactly what we expected." What Thekvar couldn't see was that half of those ship signatures were actually decoys. The humans had learned to fool alien sensors by broadcasting fake energy signatures. Some of the warships near Mars were actually empty cargo containers with signal generators attached. Dr. Lisa Webb was working frantically to decode more alien communications. She had discovered that the Zephyrians had a rigid command structure. Every decision had to be approved by higher-ranking officers, and every battle plan followed ancient traditions. "Emma, look at this conversation," Lisa said to Communications Officer Emma Green. "They're talking about something called honorable victory conditions." Emma studied the translation. "It sounds like they have rules about how battles should be fought. They only attack military targets, they don't use certain types of weapons, and they always give enemies a chance to surrender." Lisa realized this was humanity's biggest advantage. Humans didn't have honorable victory conditions. They fought to win, using every dirty trick they could think of. They would attack civilian targets if it helped them win. They would lie, cheat, and break every rule of war if it meant survival. In the asteroid belt, Sergeant Mike Davis and his team had finished planting quantum mines throughout the entire region. The mines were disguised as natural rock formations, invisible to alien sensors. "Mike, we've got all 847 mines in position," his demolition expert reported. "They're linked to the central detonator aboard Admiral Brooks' flagship." Mike wiped sweat from his forehead. The work had been exhausting and dangerous, but they had done it. When the alien fleet passed through the asteroid belt, they would trigger the largest explosion in human history. Commander Laura Stone piloted the Shadowrunner away from the asteroid field. "Mike, are you sure those mines will work against alien shields?" "Dr. Hayes says the quantum explosions operate outside normal physics," Mike replied. "The alien shields were designed to stop regular matter and energy. They've never encountered quantum detonations before." As the alien main fleet approached Mars, they detected the human battle fleet waiting for them. The ships looked desperate and poorly organized, exactly what the aliens expected from a primitive species making its last stand. "Pathetic," War Marshal Tekvar said as he studied the human formation. "They have no concept of proper battle tactics. This will be over quickly." But the humans weren't trying to fight a proper battle. They were laying the most complex trap in military history. Every desperate ship position had been carefully calculated. Every panicked radio transmission was actually a coded signal. Even their apparent disorganization was part of the plan. Admiral Helen Brooks sat in her command chair aboard the flagship Liberty, watching the alien fleet approach Mars. Around her, dozens of officers were monitoring different aspects of the trap. "All stations report ready," her tactical officer announced. Helen took a deep breath. In a few hours, they would discover if human ingenuity could overcome alien superiority. "Signal all ships. Operation Trojan Horse is now active." The aliens came forward confidently, expecting an easy victory. They had no idea they were flying into the most sophisticated military ambush ever created. Humanity was about to show them why underestimating humans was the last mistake they would ever make. War Marshal Tekvar stood on his flagship's bridge, looking at the red planet Mars growing larger on the main screen. His fleet of 12 massive warships moved through space in perfect formation, just as they had done in 17 previous conquests. "Status report," Tekvar commanded. His tactical officer studied the displays. "War Marshal, we detect 43 human vessels in orbit around the fourth planet. Most appear to be cargo ships and mining vessels. Only 12 show significant weapon signatures." Tekvar nodded with satisfaction. The humans had gathered their pathetic fleet for one final battle. It would be over in minutes. "Sir, we're also detecting several orbital platforms around the planet," the tactical officer continued. "They appear to be mining stations and communication relays." "Ignore them," Tekvar said dismissively. "Focus on the military vessels. We'll destroy the platforms after we eliminate their fleet." What Tekvar couldn't see was that every mining station was actually a heavily armed weapons platform. The communication relays were massive gun batteries. Even the cargo ships were disguised warships loaded with experimental weapons. Admiral Tom Wright sat in his command center deep inside Mars's largest canyon. Around him, technicians monitored hundreds of hidden weapon systems throughout the planet's orbital space. Tom had spent 6 months turning Mars into the biggest military trap in human history. "Admiral, the alien fleet has entered the kill zone," his weapons officer reported. Tom looked at the tactical display. The alien ships were exactly where he wanted them. "All stations, stand by. Wait for my signal." On the surface of Mars, Captain Maria Lopez commanded a fortress built into the planet's rocky terrain. The fortress was called Iron Mountain, and it housed humanity's most powerful weapon, a railgun the size of a skyscraper. "Maria, we have target lock on the alien flagship," her gunner reported. Maria watched the alien formation through her periscope. The massive ships looked invincible, but she knew they had weaknesses. "Hold your fire, we stick to the plan." The plan was simple, but deadly. Let the aliens get close. Let them start their attack. Then hit them with everything at once. The aliens expected humans to fight like the other species they had conquered. They were wrong. War Marshal Thekvar gave the order to begin bombardment. All ships fire at will. Destroy those mining platforms first. Energy beams lanced out from the alien warships, striking what appeared to be defenseless orbital stations. The first platform exploded in a ball of fire, then the second, then the third. Excellent, Thekvar said. These humans build very flimsy structures. But something was wrong. His sensors officer was frowning at his instruments. War Marshal, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the destroyed platforms. What kind of signatures? It looks like they were transmitting data right before they exploded, almost like they were scanning our weapons as we fired. Thekvar felt the first hint of unease. Explain. Sir? It's possible those platforms were not just mining stations. They might have been sensor arrays designed to analyze our weapon frequencies. Before Thekvar could respond, his communications officer interrupted. War Marshal, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it through. Admiral Helen Brooks's voice filled the alien bridge. Attention, Zephyrian Fleet. This is Admiral Brooks of Earth Defense Command. You have entered Mars orbital space without permission. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Thekvar laughed. Consequences? Your species is about to be extinct and you threaten us? You were warned, Helen replied calmly. Suddenly, the cargo ships near Mars dropped their disguises. Fake hull plating fell away to reveal massive weapon arrays. The ships that had looked harmless moments before were actually the most heavily armed vessels in human space. All ships open fire, Admiral Tom Wright commanded. The trap sprang with devastating force. Hidden weapons platforms throughout Mars orbital space revealed themselves, firing railguns that accelerated projectiles to incredible speeds. The mining stations that the aliens had ignored turned out to be massive missile batteries. Captain Maria Lopez gave the order she had been waiting months to give. Fire Iron Mountain, the giant railgun built into Mars' surface, unleashed a projectile the size of a city bus, accelerated to 10% of light speed. The projectile struck the alien flagship's shields at the exact moment when they were transitioning between frequency patterns. For the first time in centuries, Zephyrian shields failed. The projectile punched through the flagship's armor like paper, tearing a hole through 3 decks before exploding deep inside the ship. Thekvar was thrown to the floor as his bridge filled with smoke and sparks. Damage report, he shouted. Hull breach in sections 7 through 12. Shield generators are offline. We're losing atmosphere. Around the flagship, the other alien vessels were facing their own disasters. Commander Alex Johnson's squadron of stealth fighters had appeared inside the alien formation, having used quantum signature masking to avoid detection. All fighters engage chaos protocols, Alex commanded. The human fighters began firing weapons that behaved in completely random patterns. Missiles that changed direction without warning, energy beams that split into multiple streams, explosives that detonated at unpredictable intervals. The alien defense computers designed to calculate and counter logical attack patterns went into overload trying to predict attacks that had no pattern at all. Submarshal Creedon watched in horror as his invincible fleet began taking serious damage. How is this possible? Our shields should stop anything they can throw at us. His tactical officer was frantically checking his instruments. Sir, they're timing their attacks to hit us during shield frequency transitions. Someone has analyzed our defensive systems down to the microsecond. Dr. Patricia Young's quantum signature masking was working perfectly. Her technology made human ships appear to be in multiple locations at once, confusing alien targeting systems. Weapons that should have hit their targets were striking empty space instead. On Earth, Dr. Susan Hayes was coordinating the timing of every human attack. Her computers had calculated the alien shield frequencies so precisely that human weapons were hitting their targets with perfect timing. All units, next frequency transition in 3 seconds, Susan announced over the tactical network. 2, 1, fire. Another wave of human weapons struck alien shields at their weakest moment. More Zephyrian ships took critical damage. War Marshal Thekvar struggled to understand what was happening. His fleet had conquered 17 star systems using the same tactics and technology. Nothing like this had ever happened before. Communications. Send a distress signal to the home fleet, he ordered. Sir, something is jamming our long-range communications. We can't reach the Empire. Lieutenant Kevin Hart smiled as he monitored the alien communication attempts from his electronic warfare ship. His cyber weapons had infiltrated the alien network, turning their own communication systems against them. Sorry, Marshal, Kevin said to himself. No calling for help. The battle was becoming a massacre. Human weapons timed to exploit alien weaknesses were tearing through ships that had been considered invincible. The rigid alien battle formations, unchanged for centuries, made them perfect targets for human tactics. Captain Rick Sullivan's experimental ship Prometheus fired humanity's ultimate weapon, a directed antimatter burst that Dr. Carol Jenkins had designed specifically to counter rotating shield frequencies. The beam tore through 3 alien dreadnoughts simultaneously, causing massive explosions. Commander Frank Lewis coordinated attacks from ships hidden throughout the solar system. Vessels that had been disguised as asteroids, space debris, and even planetary surfaces revealed themselves and joined the assault. All hidden units, this is Lewis. Execute surprise attack pattern Delta. Suddenly, the aliens found themselves under attack from directions they had never suspected. Ships emerged from asteroid fields where no ship should be able to hide. Weapons platforms rose from the surfaces of moons where the aliens had detected no military activity. War Marshal Thekvar realized with growing horror that the entire solar system was a trap. Every piece of space debris, every seemingly abandoned station, every innocent-looking cargo vessel, all of it had been part of an elaborate deception. How did they hide so many ships, he asked desperately. His sensor officer was pale with shock. Sir, I think they've been preparing this trap for months, maybe years. Every scan we made, every probe we sent, they were feeding us false information. The alien fleet, which had entered Mars orbital space with absolute confidence, was now in full retreat, but the humans weren't finished. The quantum mines that Sergeant Mike Davis had planted in the asteroid belt were about to complete the trap. Admiral Brooks, the alien fleet is trying to retreat through the asteroid field, Admiral Tom Wright reported. Helen Brooks smiled grimly. Activate the quantum mines. The asteroid belt exploded. 847 quantum mines detonated. Simultaneously, creating gravitational cascades that pulled damaged alien ships into collision courses with massive rocks. The explosions were unlike anything the aliens had ever encountered, bursts of energy that ignored the laws of physics their shields were designed to counter. War Marshal Thekvar watched in despair as his fleet was torn apart by forces he didn't understand. Ships that had conquered. War Marshal Thekvar could not believe what he was seeing. His mighty fleet, which had conquered 17 star systems, was being destroyed by creatures he had considered insects. Half of his ships were already gone, and the rest were badly damaged. Sir, we've lost contact with vessels 7 through 11, his communications officer reported with a shaking voice. Thekvar looked at the tactical display. Red warning lights showed everywhere. His flagship was leaking atmosphere from dozens of hull breaches. The engine room was on fire. His shield generators were completely destroyed. How many ships do we have left? He asked quietly. 4 vessels, still capable of fighting, War Marshal. 3 more are heavily damaged but still operational. 7 ships left from 12. The humans had destroyed almost his entire fleet in less than 2 hours. It was impossible, but it was happening. On his experimental ship, Prometheus, Captain Rick Sullivan was preparing to fire humanity's most devastating weapon again. Dr. Carol Jenkins had designed the directed antimatter burst to specifically counter alien technology, and it was working perfectly. Captain, we have target lock on the alien command ship, his weapons officer announced. Rick studied the massive alien vessel on his screen. It was clearly their flagship, probably carrying their commander. Fire when ready. The antimatter beam lanced across space, striking the alien flagship's remaining shields. The energy tore through the weakened defenses like they weren't even there. The beam punched deep into the ship's hull, causing massive internal explosions. War Marshal Thekvar was thrown across his bridge as his ship shuddered under the impact. Emergency lights flashed red, and the smell of burning electronics filled the air. "War Marshal, the humans are demanding our surrender," his communications officer said. Admiral Helen Brooks' voice came through the speakers, calm and professional. "Attention remaining Zephyrian vessels. Your fleet is defeated. Surrender immediately, and you will be treated according to the laws of war." Thekvar laughed bitterly. Laws of war? These humans had broken every rule of honorable combat. They had lied about their capabilities, hidden weapons in civilian areas, and used technology that violated the accepted standards of galactic warfare. "Never," Thekvar said. "The Zephyrian Empire does not surrender to primitives." Commander Frank Lewis was coordinating the final phase of the battle from his flagship Vengeance. Human ships were emerging from hiding places throughout the solar system, surrounding the remaining alien vessels. "All units maintain formation," Frank ordered. "Don't let any of them escape." Ships that had been disguised as asteroids for months finally revealed themselves. Weapon platforms that had been buried on planetary surfaces rose into space. Even some of the larger pieces of space debris turned out to be camouflaged human vessels. The aliens found themselves completely surrounded. They had walked into the most sophisticated military trap in history, and now there was no way out. Lieutenant Kevin Hart was having the time of his life. His cyber warfare programs had completely infiltrated the alien computer networks. He could see everything they were doing, and he was making sure they couldn't coordinate their remaining forces. "Time for the final surprise," Kevin said to himself, as he activated his most devastating program. Suddenly, the alien ships began firing on each other. Kevin's virus had taken control of their weapon systems, turning their own guns against their allies. "What's happening?" War Marshal Thekvar shouted, as he watched two of his ships destroy each other. His technical officer was frantically checking his systems. "Sir, someone has infiltrated our entire computer network. They're controlling our weapons." Thekvar felt true fear for the first time in his life. Not only had the humans defeated his fleet in open combat, but they had also turned his own technology against him. These weren't primitive beings. They were the most dangerous species he had ever encountered. Dr. Lisa Webb was monitoring alien communications from the Lunar Command Center. The conversations she was hearing revealed the aliens' complete shock and confusion. "Emma, listen to this," Lisa said to Communications Officer Emma Green. "They're talking about how we've violated every principle of civilized warfare." Emma listened to the translation and smiled. "They still don't understand. They think there are rules in war." Lisa nodded. The aliens had spent centuries conquering species that fought honorably, following ancient traditions and codes of conduct. They had never faced an enemy that would do absolutely anything to survive. Admiral Helen Brooks stood on the bridge of her flagship Liberty, watching the final destruction of the alien fleet. Around her, officers were coordinating the mopping up operations. "Admiral, that's the last of them," her tactical officer reported. "All alien vessels are either destroyed or disabled." Helen felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. They had done it. Humanity had defeated an empire that had conquered 17 star systems, but she knew this was just the beginning. "Send a message to all human ships," Helen ordered. "Mission accomplished. The alien threat is eliminated." Across the solar system, human crews cheered as they received the victory message. On Mars, Captain Maria Lopez and her crew celebrated in the Iron Mountain Fortress. In the asteroid belt, Sergeant Mike Davis and his demolition team hugged each other with relief. But Helen wasn't celebrating yet. She was thinking about what came next. Dr. Ryan Clark approached her with a thick folder of reports. "Helen, we've analyzed the alien technology from the destroyed ships. The implications are staggering." "What do you mean?" Helen asked. "These aliens weren't the most advanced species in the galaxy. They were just one empire among many. Their computer systems contained star charts showing dozens of other civilizations." Helen felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you saying there are more threats out there?" "I'm saying we've just announced to the entire galaxy that humanity is a force to be reckoned with. Some civilizations might want to be our allies. Others might see us as a threat that needs to be eliminated." On the bridge of his dying flagship, War Marshal Thekvar was recording a final message to the Zephyrian Empire. If any of his ships managed to escape, this information had to reach his homeworld. "This is War Marshal Thekvar of the 4th Conquest Fleet," he said into the recorder. "We have been defeated by the species known as humans. They are not primitive, as our scouts reported. They are the most dangerous beings we have ever encountered." Thekvar paused, trying to find the right words. "They do not fight with honor. They do not follow the laws of civilized warfare. They use deception, sabotage, and weapons that violate every principle of combat we know. They turned our own technology against us." He looked around his ruined bridge. "If the Empire encounters these humans again, do not underestimate them. They are survivors who will sacrifice anything to protect their home. They are the apex predators of the galaxy." The recording ended as Thekvar's flagship finally exploded, taking the alien commander with it. Dr. Susan Hayes was studying the wreckage of alien ships, analyzing their technology with growing amazement. The aliens had been far more advanced than humans in many ways, but they had one critical weakness. "They never learned to adapt," Susan explained to her research team. "Their technology was perfect, so they never improved it. Their tactics always worked, so they never changed them. They became victims of their own success." Admiral Tom Wright was conducting his own analysis from his command center on Mars. The aliens conquered 17 civilizations using the same basic approach every time. "They expected us to react like all the others, but we didn't," his aide observed. "No, we didn't. We studied them, we adapted to them, and we used their own certainty against them. That's what makes humans different." As the solar system slowly returned to normal, humanity began to understand what they had accomplished. They had not just defeated an alien invasion, they had proven that human ingenuity and adaptability could overcome any technological advantage. But they had also revealed themselves to a galaxy full of unknown civilizations. Some might be peaceful, others might be hostile. All of them would now know that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. Admiral Helen Brooks gathered her senior staff for a final briefing. "We've won this battle, but the war for humanity's survival has just begun. We've shown the galaxy what we're capable of. Now we need to be ready for whatever comes next." Captain Rick Sullivan raised an important point. "Admiral, what if other species try to form alliances against us? What if they see us as too dangerous to be allowed to exist?" Helen smiled grimly. "Then they'll learn the same lesson the Zephyrians just learned. Humanity doesn't just fight to win. We fight to survive. And we're very, very good at surviving." As Earth's sun set on the battlefield near Mars, the scattered wreckage of the once mighty Zephyrian fleet drifted silently through space. The Empire, that had conquered 17 star systems, had been completely destroyed by a species they had considered barely sentient. The humans had kept their most devastating weapons in reserve, never showing their true capabilities until the very end. The aliens had seen humanity's restraint and mistaken it for weakness. They would never make that mistake again, because there were no aliens left alive to make any mistakes at all. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. They were no longer the primitive species hiding on a single plan. The medical ship Hope's Light moved slowly through the dark space between two fighting armies. Captain Linda Hayes stood on the bridge watching the stars. She had gray hair and tired eyes from 15 years of running hospital ships. The war between the Zelvani and Krynoth people had been going on for 3 years now. Her ship carried wounded soldiers from both sides. That was the rule. Medical ships helped everyone. It did not matter which side they fought for. The ship was painted white with big red crosses on every side. Every species in the galaxy knew what those symbols meant. They meant safety. They meant healing. They meant no weapons. Linda had seen terrible things in her years as a captain, but she believed in the rules. Even enemies respected medical ships. That was how civilization worked. Lieutenant Jake Morris sat at the communication station. He was young with brown hair and quick fingers on the controls. He looked up at Linda and smiled. "The Zelvani ships know we are here. The Krynoth ships also sent acknowledgement. We are clear to pass through the combat zone." Linda nodded and drank her coffee. "Good. How are the patients doing? Dr. Peter Grant walked onto the bridge holding a data pad. He was the chief medical officer and had been saving lives for 20 years. The critical cases are all stable now. The Krynoth soldiers we picked up yesterday are responding well to treatment. We should reach the neutral station in about 18 hours. Linda looked at the star map on her screen. 18 hours. Then they would unload the wounded at the safe station and go back into the war zone to pick up more. That was the cycle. Save who you can, move them to safety, go back and save more. She had done this hundreds of times. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. Ensign Amy Clark worked at the sensor station. She was the youngest crew member at only 22 years old. Her red hair was pulled back tight. Suddenly she sat up straight. Captain, I have a contact on sensors. It is a Zelvani heavy cruiser. The ship name is Talon's Edge. They are holding position at the edge of the safe corridor. Linda set down her coffee cup. Hail them, Jake. Send our medical status again, just to be sure. Jake's fingers moved fast across his panel. Sending now, Captain. His face changed. They are responding. Audio only. The alien voice came through the speakers. The computer translated it into English. Human vessel Hope's Light. We acknowledge your medical status. Your passage is recognized under Galactic Council protocols. Linda spoke clearly. Thank you, Commander. We are carrying wounded from both Zelvani and Krynoth forces. Our destination is Station Mercy 7. There was a pause. Understood. Safe travels, Hope's Light. The connection ended. Linda picked up her coffee again. See? Even in war, some things stay civilized. She took a sip. Amy's voice cut through the calm like a knife. Captain, the Talon's Edge is charging weapons. All weapon systems are powering up. Energy levels are spiking. Linda's hand froze with the cup halfway to her mouth. What? Jake, open a channel right now. Jake's face went pale. Channel open, Captain, but they are not answering. Linda's voice stayed calm even though ice filled her stomach. Raise shields. All hands brace for impact. Broadcast our medical status on every frequency we have. The Hope's Light's defensive screens came online. They were not strong shields. Medical ships did not carry military-grade defenses. That was part of the rules. Peter grabbed onto a rail. Linda, we have patients in surgery right now. We cannot make evasive moves. Linda looked at him. I know, Peter. Amy's sensors screamed warnings. Multiple plasma torpedoes incoming. 20 seconds to impact. Linda pressed the ship-wide intercom. All decks, this is the captain. She paused. What could she say? What words mattered now? I need you to know that serving with you has been the greatest honor of my life. The first torpedo hit the left side of the ship. It tore through the shields like paper through air. The explosion ripped through the medical bays where wounded soldiers from both sides were sleeping in their beds. Zelvani and Krynoth dying together. The second torpedo hit the engine room. The power core started to break apart. Linda watched her screens go dark one by one. 700 people on her ship. 700 doctors and nurses and medics. 700 people who had spent their lives healing others. She thought about her Uncle Greg, who was an admiral. She thought about the message she had sent him last week about a new surgery technique. The ammunition storage exploded. The Hope's Light became a ball of white fire that lit up the dark space for just a moment. Then it was gone. Only debris remained. Medical equipment floating in space. Bodies in white uniforms. A stuffed toy that one of the nurses kept on her desk. 40 light years away on Earth, deep under the ground, Admiral Greg Fisher stood in the military command center. He was 68 years old with white hair and a face carved by hard decisions. An automated distress signal came through. He watched the Hope's Light's life signs on his display. He watched them all go to zero. His aide, Commander Luke Barnes, stood next to him. Sir, initial reports indicate deliberate fire from a Zelvani cruiser. The Hope's Light was broadcasting medical status on all frequencies. Greg stared at the empty screen where his niece's ship used to be. Linda had called him Uncle Greg even after she made captain. She had been so excited about her work. So proud to serve on a hospital ship. Get me the president. Greg's voice was quiet but cold. Tell her it is time to remind the galaxy why you don't touch our medics. Luke hurried away to make the call. Greg stood alone in the command center looking at the data. 700 people murdered while trying to save lives. 700 healers killed while treating the wounded. This was not an accident of war. This was not a stray shot. This was a choice. The Zelvani had made a choice. Now humanity would make one too. Within an hour, emergency meetings started on Earth. The president was briefed. The military prepared options. The news spread across the planet. A hospital ship destroyed. All crew lost. Deliberate attack. The word went out to every human colony and every human ship. The Hope's light was gone. But what came next would echo across the galaxy for generations. The United Earth Parliament met 2 hours after the Hope's light died. President Catherine Blake walked to the speaker's platform. Her face looked like it was made from stone. The holographic screens around the chamber showed the debris field. Pieces of what used to be a hospital ship floated in the darkness of space. 700 personnel. Catherine's voice was hard and cold. Doctors, nurses, medics, surgeons, they were not soldiers. They carried no weapons. They flew under the protection of every galactic law and treaty. And they were murdered. The Parliament chamber was silent. Representative Helen Cole was crying quietly in her seat. Her daughter had been a nurse on the Hope's Light. She was 26 years old. Now she was gone. Catherine continued speaking. The Zelvani Collective has issued a statement. They claim the attack was a tragic mistake, a rogue commander acting without authorization. They offer compensation and apologies. She paused. Her hands gripped the podium so hard her knuckles turned white. I say their apologies are not enough. Admiral Greg Fisher stood up from his seat. He was the oldest admiral in the fleet. He had fought in 17 major battles over 46 years. His face showed every hard decision he had ever made. Madam President, members of Parliament, I have served this fleet since I was 22 years old. I have ordered attacks that still haunt my dreams, but I have never once authorized fire on a medical vessel. He stopped and looked around the room. There are lines that cannot be crossed. When someone crosses them, they must learn why those lines exist. General Kevin Shaw stood next. He commanded the Earth Marine Corps. The Galactic Council is calling for restraint. They want investigations and committees and diplomatic solutions. Meanwhile, the Zelvani commander responsible has been quietly promoted and transferred. This is how they treat the murder of our healers. The debate went on for 6 hours. Some members called for sanctions and legal action. Others demanded immediate military response. Videos played showing the Hope's light on previous missions. Linda Hayes smiling as she welcomed wounded soldiers onto her ship. Doctors working to save a Kreenoth warrior who had been burned in battle. Nurses singing birthday songs for a young pilot who turned 20 while recovering from injuries. When the vote finally came, it was almost unanimous. Earth would go to war. Above Mars in the fleet staging area, Captain Ryan Foster received his orders. He stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Vengeance. The ship was new with weapons that made other species nervous. Humans had spent thousands of years fighting each other. They knew how to build things that killed efficiently. All department heads report to the briefing room. Ryan was 42 years old. Young for a battlecruiser captain, but he had earned his rank fighting the Kreenoth in the border wars. Commander Nina Wells was already in the briefing room when Ryan arrived. She was his second in command. Captain, we are being assigned to Battle Group 7. 12 heavy cruisers, 6 battlecruisers, 2 carriers. The Vengeance will be the flagship. Ryan looked at the star map. Their target glowed on the display, the Zelvani home system. They are not holding back. Nina's face was grim. No, sir. Admiral Fisher wants this to be unmistakable. The order is direct. The Zelvani military is to be neutralized with extreme prejudice. Lieutenant Paul Carson came in next. He was the weapons officer. Captain, I have been reviewing our targeting priorities. The intelligence package is very detailed. Show me, Ryan said. The hologram changed to show the Zelvani home system. A yellow sun with 6 planets. 2 of them had populations. The 3rd planet, Zelvan Prime, held their capital and military headquarters. Paul pointed at different locations. The Zelvani have 14 orbital defense platforms. Each one equals a heavy cruiser in firepower. Their home fleet has 8 battleships and about 40 support vessels. On paper, they outnumber us significantly. On paper, Nina repeated. But they have never faced a coordinated human assault. Ryan nodded slowly. Humanity had learned warfare the hard way, fighting themselves. For thousands of years, they had perfected the art of killing their own kind. When they reached the stars, they brought that knowledge with them. Lieutenant Carla Hayes entered last. She was the ship's doctor. What about civilian casualties? Her brother had died on the Hope's Light. He had been a medic. Ryan looked at her. Rules of engagement are strict. Military targets only. But those targets include every ship and station and facility capable of supporting military operations. The Zelvani are going to learn the difference between a mistake and deliberate policy. The briefing continued for another hour. Charts showed approach vectors. Lists detailed every target. Backup plans covered contingencies. When it ended, Ryan stood and addressed his crew over the ship-wide intercom. All hands, this is the captain. In 6 hours we depart for the Zelvani home system. I will not lie to you about what we are facing. The Zelvani are a warrior culture with a military tradition spanning thousands of years. They are experienced and disciplined and well-armed. He paused and looked out at Mars through the window. But they made one critical mistake. They forgot that before humans were explorers and before we were diplomats or traders, we were survivors. We are a species that conquered our own world 100 times over, and now they will learn what that means. Ryan's voice grew colder. They killed our healers. They murdered people who existed only to save lives. The Galactic Council can debate and investigate all they want. We are going to deliver a different kind of verdict. Throughout the fleet, similar speeches happened on dozens of ships. On the carrier, Thunderchild Admiral Fisher addressed his strike group commanders through holographic conference. The objective is simple. When we are finished, the Zelvani Collective will not have the military capacity to threaten anyone for a generation. We are going to break them so thoroughly that every species in the galaxy will remember what happens when you attack a human medical ship. Captain Steve Price of the heavy cruiser. Defiant raised his hand. Admiral, some of the other council races are expressing concern about our response. The Tyrellians have formally requested we reconsider. Fisher's face did not change. Captain Price. The Tyrellians lost a medical ship to pirates 40 years ago. They filed protests and investigations. They are still waiting for justice. We do things differently. Yes, sir, Steve replied. His voice carried fierce pride. The conference ended. Fisher sat alone in his office looking at the personnel files of the Hope's light crew. 700 faces looked back at him. Linda's photo was in the front row. She was smiling in her captain's uniform. He remembered her graduation from the academy. He remembered her first command. He remembered the last message she had sent him talking about a new surgery technique. Computer. Record a message for the fleet. The recording light came on. This is Admiral Fisher to all personnel of Task Force Retribution. In a few hours we will cross into Zelvani space. What we do there will echo through history. Some will call us vengeful. Some will call us monsters. Let them. We are the answer to a simple question. What happens when you murder those who exist only to heal? Remember the Hope's light. Remember why we do not forgive this. And show them why humanity's mercy is a gift, not a weakness. The fleet began to move. Ships from Earth and Mars and the outer colonies, all heading toward one destination. The Zelvani were about to learn a lesson written in fire. The Zelvani home system of Zelvan Prime had never been attacked in 3,000 years. Defense platforms circled the inhabited worlds. The home fleet patrolled with confidence born from centuries of safety. Nobody had ever dared to strike at the heart of the collective. Admiral Kreshtor stood on the bridge of the battleship Pride of Zelvan. His dorsal crest was raised high as he reviewed the morning reports. The humans had protested the destruction of their medical vessel. That was expected. The diplomats would handle it with reparations and apologies. Maybe a tribunal for Commander Veshkan, who had fired on the hospital ship. Then everything would return to normal. Admiral, his sensor officer called out. We are detecting multiple hyperspace ruptures at the system boundary. Significant energy signatures. Kreshtor's crest lowered slightly. Identify them. Analyzing now. The officer's voice grew uncertain. Configuration matches human military vessels. Counting 12 contacts, 15, 20.